This project covers a lot of ground. If you're fond of politics, well, if you like machinery, engineering, isometric drawing and the like, well, you'll find there's a lot of that too. And if it's history you're after, this is an old building. Some of you might know it, but it doesn't really matter. When we look at a building like this and talk about history, we usually mean who lived there and what did they do. But there's another way of looking at this building. For example, if you fitted some decking, UPVC windows, a boiler and a hob, someone could live there. But if you were to try that in the south of England, you'd be pulled up straight away. People would come along and say, "You're wrecking the character of the area." Well, I'm not going to talk too much more about that. But this talk is about that kind of history. It's about how history is actually in little pockets all around us, and the future is too. And we have to decide what to do about it. So now we are going to go to a foreign land, far, far away. Most people will know a bit about this place. The capital is Madrid. It's hotter than here. They speak Spanish and they play guitar. All true. But when you get close, things can look a bit different. Up here, in this corner, they speak a language which is like Spanish, but called Catalan. Now, I'm not the one to ask about Spanish history, but I do know this. The truth is, all the way down this side, they speak a little bit of Catalan, in some form, or a little bit. And if you go out to sea, to these little islands here, you'll find they speak Catalan. And that is not the end of it. Let's go right the way across the map, right into the blue and right off the edge of the map. And you'll come to a large island called Sardinia, part way to Italy. Now, nobody knows about the language that the people in Sardinia speak, but we do know this: it's got some Catalan in it. Now we go to another map, much the same as the last, but with a little difference. This flag here is over mountains called the Pyrenees. For listeners who come from England, imagine Snowdonia between Manchester and London. The arrow points to a small valley. It's called Val d'Aran. Now, this is a funny name because it means valley of the valley in two different languages. And they do speak funny up there. They speak a language called Occitan. Occitan, it turns out, was the source language of both some parts of French and Spanish. So you can blame this on the mountains. Meanwhile, over here in France is a place called Gascony. They speak funny over here too. We have a friend who lives over there. And she said, for 3 sentences, you think you're listening to French. Then you realise you haven't got a clue what you're listening to. In the village, the teenagers would point at people who'd driven into the village and shout, "They're speaking French." The language they were speaking is called Gascon. And turns out, looking back over here, over the border, it's a kind of Occitan. Occitan is also spoken here and another kind is spoken over here. And if we trail off the map, there is a small valley in the Italian Alps where they speak yet another kind of Occitan. So, what does this mean? Well, people who study languages still use the word dialect. They mean two languages which come from the same tree. But you have to listen to one language in one ear, and you have to listen to the other language through your other ear. What they do not mean is that a language is from a region. Look at Catalan. The region is not what you think it is, and this is a live issue right now. And look at Gascon. Time was, if you wanted a bar fight, well, you just go into Gascony and you start talking about the funny dialect they speak in. And what this means is you'll not hear me use the word dialect again. So how does this kind of thing come about? Well, this group, Heritage Hackers, were producing a memorial show to celebrate the local singer Gracie Fields. I turned up late. I had to listen to 2 hours of Gracie Fields tracks being played backwards. This kind of thing can have an effect on your psyche. I woke up the next morning and dreamt up the Lancashire translator. How do you translate a language? Well, it's not a dictionary. Here's a very common French sentence, and here is a word-by-word translation. Now let's be big-hearted, shall we? You get the drift. However, I guarantee you any good translator can do better than this. Here's how we do it. Here's a famous sentence used for teaching American English. Now, you and me would start with the concept of cat. Furry, has claws, needs food. I'm Matt. Flat patch, hopefully stays put. Let me tell you, computers are very bad at this kind of information gathering. What they're good at is just looking at the next word. It's not something that you and me would do, but I'll show you how it works. Here's a sentence you'll probably all recognise. Try and translate that word for word into another language and you'll get into all sorts of trouble. What do you mean? You've got a table, are you going to push it against a wall? Motion. Is it a kind of motion? Are you going to dance on the table? Let's look at this like a computer. We start with the thing word, table. After that, we've got, well, a fixed word. And that's the wrong way round, isn't it? It should really be the table, not table the. Then we finish with another thing word, motion. Well now, this is very confusing. I mean, the only thing that really fits that kind of scheme is something like John the Baptist or cross the river. So, looking at the next word, the computer can see that something is wrong. And a quick look at the second one, which I heard someone say just last year. Looking at the way the words join together, well, you're supposed to go to or from or behind something. And what's this way thing on the end? I mean, does this mean I'm going to walk along Manor Farm path? So, looking at the way words join together, a computer can spot there is something strange going on. Not what we would do, but it works alright. And once they know something is wrong, how does a translator figure out what it should be doing? The first way is not what you might think. You take some words, you take a very good translation, you put them both into a computer, the computer works out the chances that one word comes after another in a line. Then when it sees words coming in, it goes, well, given that I've got this word and I've got this word, what are the chances that these are the same as the very good translation I was given in the first place? It's been found that this gives you a pretty good shot at getting some kind of translation, and it's the method used by the Google Translator. It has its downsides. It takes days, weeks sometimes, using very powerful computers to work out all these statistics. Also, it's very hard to tweak it once you've got it going. And, bit of a disadvantage this one, Google reckon to get a good translation you need about 2 to 3 million words to be translated. There's another sort of general approach that people use. This is to get someone who knows the language pretty well to actually program into the computer saying what is going to come after what. Now, this has its downsides too, because if it doesn't recognise what's coming in this method, it just does nothing. Also, you will need someone who can speak the language and who is going to take all this time to figure these things out and get them into the computer. Still, there are some people who still use these methods. Well, for a Lancashire translator, I needed something that would work on a small amount of material and was easily tweakable. So you can see why I went for the less popular, less well-known kind of software that you find down here, which may get you to thinking, well, what is this Apertium thing? Originally, it was a project funded by the Spanish government to convert to Catalan, referencing things we've talked about earlier. But computer folks hate to give up on a good thing. So the project's continued and it's been put to rather a lot of uses. Brace yourselves for the most unreadable slide that was ever splashed across a display screen. The Apertium core, or as computer people sometimes call it, an engine, has been used to drive websites, spell checkers, professional translation engines, film subtitles, online services, Wikipedia translations, just about any translation project you can conceive of, and quite a few languages that have been less well considered elsewhere. Here is Occitan alongside Turkish languages, Afrikaans and Esperanto. And here, folks, is how it does it. Right, grit your teeth, ready for this? In come the words. They get slashed down to what you might call a root. This then goes through a translation dictionary, followed by an Apertium speciality, an attempt to remove ambiguous words, followed by code which attempts to rearrange the words if that's necessary, because it really is with some languages, and then we turn all those little bits of word roots into the final language. One final little tweak: if you know Spanish, this turns DEL into del, and out. If all this looks a bit heavy for you, can I suggest you just Dream you're in a forest somewhere in Spain and the sun's out and falling through the branches into dapples over the ground. And I'll tell you when to come back, because I'm going to quickly show you the insides. If you try to ignore what's going on around it, I think you can see roughly what's going on here. Here's a brook, but in Lancashire it's a beck. Here's a flea, but in Lancashire it's a lop. Right, moving swiftly on, and if you're in that Spanish forest you can come back to Lancashire now. Here's one of the major packages, a website dedicated to Lancashire translation. But before we get into that, I wonder, is there anyone here who knows what this next picture is? Anyone? This is a picture of a castle, and it's in Bordeaux in France. Seems like people are working on it, and if you thought that, you'd be right. But here's the thing, this is not an old castle. It's brand new, and they're building it from scratch using nothing but donkeys and ropes that they've weaved themselves. You can learn a lot like this. For example, they found they just weren't using enough lime. I mean, you need lime to glue the joints together, but the old castles had so much more lime around them than they were using. The only good explanation we've got for this is that the people who made the castles originally figured the outsides. That's right. They weren't pretty rustic stone buildings. They were coloured green and pink, like little Disney castles. Might be worth thinking about that when you consider how I've tried to rebuild the Lancashire language. Right, what's this translator made of then? Well, I have no academic resources and no access. Also, the English translator is on to version 2, but this is still roughly correct. The main dictionaries, which you saw earlier, are roughly 1/2 things I got from the web. This includes Tim Bobbin's dictionary, which was a big help. Of the rest, 1/4 is George Kelsall's bookshop, and the other 1/4 is just stuff I know, or have gathered, or that we could call original research. The translation data also includes a handful of rules and has been heavily cross-checked against the thesaurus. I wrote a program to help do that, but that lies a little bit outside this talk. Now, let's ask a question, a book learning question. Mr. Waugh lived 200 years ago now. For that reason, a lot of people would say, well, we'll take the things he wrote down, but we won't listen to him. I'd point out that he listened to Lancashire every day and that he really knew how to write. A modern academic will be better documented, but they might only stick with it for a handful of years, and they don't listen every day to the sounds of clogs. I'm not telling anyone what to think here. I'm showing you that when you rebuild a thing, you go a long way past digging up a word and putting it on show. Here's a word, brosen. It means large. Now, did that mean a large tree, or a large sheep, or a large person? And what's brose? Was that a do word? Because whenever you get that ending, N, it sounds a lot like shaken, for example, or broken, which are both do words, shake something, break something. And because we're rebuilding, like that castle I showed you earlier, we can't get away with simply writing the word down and saying, well, that's what it means. And if that's not what we're doing, then the rebuilding project is going to challenge me in a different way. Do we have words brose, broser, and brosist? I'm not saying I've got answers to any of these questions. All I'm saying is I've got to make as much sense as I can, and I can't get away with just writing stuff in. Here's a word used a lot, proper. Now, that's a problem to start with because it's Latin. It's an old word in English, but it's Latin. It used to mean the best tool for the job. Is that how they're using it in Lancashire? Were folks sometimes being a bit sarcastic? So, shall I swap the word right with proper? Any language person will tell you you're going to get in a lot of trouble there. See now, the word right is used in a lot of ways. Here's an example. I have a right to build a windmill in my garden. So, do I have a proper to build a windmill in my garden? And we've got directions. For example, do I have a proper hand, not a right hand? As it happens, there is a word in Lancashire for left-handed. It's Scandinavian, cack-handed. But is that right for proper? I'm just showing you how this rebuilding job can get to be a bit tricky. And what happens if I swap a word for lots of words? Can I say, like I think the Americans say, I've taken a clout? You know, I've taken a hit. In England, we used to talk about going out on strike. So, can I go out on a clout? And there is such a thing as impact plastic packaging. It's what you get a microwave curry in. So would someone speaking in the language of Lancashire call it clout packaging? You can see how this gets tricky. Mind you, what's wrong with clout packaging? Maybe that's what we would be saying if we were still speaking the language of Lancashire. And what about the joins between words? We'd say nearly finished, but that's not what anybody reports that I've seen. No, several reports of very near finished. This one is like digging a hole in mud. Let's make ourselves a sentence. He walked blindly into the snow. Aye. Translated, it would go, he walked very near blind into the snow. Sounds good. I can't prove it, but it sounds good. Let's invent another sentence. Early morning, she woke up. Translated, that would be, very she woke up. No good. I'm going to leave those who have an interest in language to figure that one out. Anyhow, at the end of it, we have a Lancashire translator. As I showed you earlier, there's a lot of uses for a translation engine. We could make a spell checker. We could translate Wikipedia. Often, with things like this, it's the way other people use it. Bloke I know in France used a Lancashire translator to translate Jane Austen. But I'm going to leave you with part of a feature film. I built some computer code to translate the subtitles. So now, you can watch for yourselves and you can decide what this film would look like if it had been made in Lancashire.
Careful, old Bessie up there now. Take it easy, hold it steady, girl. Get right in mouth. Take a look and see if there isn't a stone bruise in that hawk down there.
If it isn't my old friend, Sergeant Billy Pickett. Well, how are you, Billy?
Fine, Doc. I'm mighty glad to see
Billy.
you. Great heavens, the Betsy didn't figure on no stagecoach coming through. With them Apaches raising cakes. I was just telling Billy to hitch up the buckboard so we
Now, wait a
can
minute,
get
wait a
the
minute. You mean to say there are no troops at this station?
Ain't no soldiers here but what you see.
But my husband, Captain Mallory. I was told he was here.
He was, dearie. Got orders night before last to join the soldiers at Apache Wells.
Well, that means we gotta go back.
I can't go back. Now, look here, driver. You started this coach for Lordsburg, and it's your duty to get us there. And it's your duty, young man, to come along with us.
It's my duty, Mr. Gatewood, to obey orders. I'm sorry, sir.
Well, if the soldiers go back, Lieutenant, then that means we all have to go back?
My orders are to return from here immediately, and I can't disobey those orders.
I think we can get through all right, Curly.
Oh, now don't egg him on, kid. I'm driving this here outfit, and, well, if the soldiers go back, so am I.
I call this a desertion of duty. I'll report you to your superior officer. And if necessary, I'll take the matter up with Washington.
That's your privilege, sir. But if you give us any trouble here, I'll have to put you under restraint.
Now, don't lose your temper. Don't lose your temper.
I'll tell you how we settle it. We'll take a boat. Inside, everybody. Come on, Buck.
Oh, but Curly, I don't want to go.
Now, you girls, set yourselves down. I'll get you some feed.
Now, folks, if we push on, we can be in Apache Wells by sundown. Soldiers there will give us an escort as far as the ferry. Then it's only a hoot and a holler into Lordsburg.
Well, that old mare,
We
I
got
don't
4
think-
men can handle firearms. 5 with you, Ringo. Doc can shoot if sober.
I can shoot. I can shoot.